are with the annual meeting for February 25th, 2024. Some of the artwork that we have seen in the workshops and by some of our members, and it looks really, really good. And I'm really happy to see all that they have done. And then we have a mission statement. The mission of the San Diego Book Arts is to serve as an educational and creative resource to advance the book as a vital contemporary art form. And I think that's a great mission. And I have been a school teacher. I retired after 32 years of teaching mostly math and computer science, but I get to teach 1 year of English. And my wife invited me to take a workshop on making a chair book. And I thought about that and I said, sure, why not? So that got me started into making books, and I have been doing that since then. And I've created a lot of books since then. And I am signing up again for the chair book workshop because I never finished my chair book. So I'm going to try it again. But I just want to keep making books and see what's going on with all of that, and hope that I can help guide the San Diego Book Arts ahead. And we have a board of directors that has an executive committee members. That's myself as the chair, Nancy, and Holiday as our treasurer, and Patsy Surrett, who does the monthly meetings. Thank you. We also have in the board of directors, Susie Ahern, Jennifer Graves, who does membership, Rosemary Ray, who does the exhibits, and Maria Ribello, who does the monthly meetings and the social promotion. And I'm so glad to work with all of these fine people. And it's really nice that we all get along as well as we do.
And on this slide, this isn't our whole team, because we do have others that are contributing and giving of their time and care. But this team of three really is a pretty major support to the board of directors, these three individuals, Jennifer Guerin, Amy Spencer, and Jen Kwan. And Jennifer takes care of end paper. She's a tremendous publisher and puts it all together for us. Amy has helped with workshops for quite a while, and not just the spreadsheet, we do some planning together and thinking together, organizing together. And Jen Kwan is now our digital media specialist, and also one of her friends and cohorts is Gretchen. So they work together and help keep things happening on the website. So we're really grateful for them.
We have now been doing this for 27 years, and I'm really proud of that. And we have over 220 members in 4 different countries. Most of our members are from San Diego area, but we are branching out and reaching new areas, and I think that's great. We have over 50 books that have been entered in our member exhibit from 2023, and I thought that was a wonderful exhibit and saw lots of different books, and it was great. And we have a digital presence on our social media. We have over 929 followers on Facebook. We're doing an outreach and workshops, and the End Papers is our bi-monthly newsletter, and it keeps you current on our doings, the local and the regional and national book arts competitions, and updates you on the community outreach and other features. And you can see here that we do have to have an awful lot of people who find some or a lot of value from our newsletter, and very high value for our workshops by age. It's broken down, and I think that's really great. When you join SDBA, you bring your own special talents and experiences to the larger community of members, and this makes our organization a richer source of talent and inspiration. And as I said, you can see that we have 36% from San Diego, but we also have 16% from Southern California. So that makes the majority of our members from the California area. but we do reach out, and we have 3% outside the US, and I think that's pretty great. Almost everybody finds a lot of value in the San Diego Book Arts who is a member, and you can see over on the right side the high values and some values and no values. Mostly we do really well in all age brackets, and I really think that's great. We have some initiatives for this year. We want to build collaborations with other organizations to enhance the membership offerings, as we have done with the Athenaeum in La Jolla. And that's been wonderful to have been able to work with them and bring a couple of artists up from Argentina to present some wonderful workshops. And we are trying to develop effective tools for reaching out to our members for feedback and growth, so that we can figure out what to do to better serve all of our members. And we would like to try to reunite with our local libraries to bring the book offerings back to the neighborhood communities. I know I certainly enjoyed going to many of the libraries to watch and participate in the workshops there. Anna Holiday is our CPA, and she gives the treasurer's report. She provides guidance to keep the San Diego Book Arts in compliant with the nonprofit regulations, because we are a nonprofit organization. She maintains all the financial books and records, and she invests excess funds that we may have for sustainability over the years to come. And I really appreciate that she does all of this for her.
You know, we don't know. Oh, go ahead, Rich.
No, you're up.
Okay. We don't always know why we're put in certain life situations, but I do know this. It seems that I have silently worked on behalf of a very dedicated individual, Elaine Antioch. Elaine is no longer with us, and I never had the pleasure of knowing her. But I know that she cared deeply about this organization. She adored book arts. She kept SDBA alive for many years. She attracted quality persons to serve on the board of directors. And she was a dedicated artist, yet far beyond that, and in her generosity, she provided untold resources to this organization. I've had the pleasure of knowing Elaine's sister Adele, and we worked together for nearly 7 years. I had Adele read this speech so that to make sure that she approved and that I had things handled correctly. And she really appreciated that her sister was being honored. I also know that there's many others who've given their efforts and love and time to help SDBA thrive. We're seemingly at our strongest today. Appreciation goes out to all who've worked towards this outcome. Lark Burkhart honored and met the board, the directives from the board of directors back in 2014. She set SDBA on a viable nonprofit course. I started volunteering under Lark's leadership, and it was a pleasure to work and learn from her. From SDBA's books, Lark showed and taught me what best serves the organization. I also thank Tallene Hartunian for her executive director leadership principles. As Lark moved on, Gretchen Hegel took on the challenge and volunteered, serving as SDBA's chair for some 6 years. Under Gretchen's tenure, SDBA grew. It spread throughout the United States and beyond. And I thank Gretchen for those years and for the support, trust, and freedom that she offered me towards our workshop program. I can't tell you of all the personal gifts, of the new and renewed friendships, and how much they all mean. Many of you have deeply touched my life. I adore working with the creative teachers, and I love learning. I also thank our current board of directors. They're wonderful, and I think we're off to a great start. In this new role of executive director, I am here to serve at the pleasure of the board. I thank you for the trust you've placed in me, and I thank you for wanting this new role to encompass and maintain SDBA's workshop chair position. Yes, we did have the collaboration with the Athenaeum, and I wish that I could I think we did really well. It's hard. You don't want to speak. I don't want to speak for other people, but I've only gotten positive feedback, and I hope to have a meeting with the group that I worked with at the Athenaeum. But we just received nothing but you know positive feedback, and the classes were great, and everybody seemed to be pretty happy with all that happened. We also had a fun gathering in La Jolla at the library, and Sol presented, and so did Juan. What was also fun is the camaraderie that existed in our times together and between the classes. Al Rodriguez was in the first one, and I thank him again because on the second day of class, he brought all his tools. So people had lots of fun shopping through Al's handmade tools. They also had fun buying Juan's tools, also his metal tools. And now I'm starting to prepare to bring in some more artists to the Art Center. These next two slides are just some little snippets of workshops. And there's lots more on the website. So please, take, if you're interested, you know where to find them. And we're also doing more posting with social media. This slide with the anticipated instructors, these are all the people that I'm working with and talking with. Some contracts are in place, some are still in the talking stages and thinking stages, but all of these people are interested in teaching for us this year. So I have my work cut out for me to try to manage the calendar and put this together for you. Oh, this is exciting. Rosemary's got the first exhibit ready, and all the details are on the website. So if you go to the heading for exhibits, you'll find all the applications and everything that you need. It's a smaller exhibit because of the limited space, but it's all there for you to read about. And we hope you'll join in and have fun with this. On social media.
Go ahead.
Okay, on social media, I just want you all to know that we really did try to revive the old Instagram account. We just couldn't find the person who opened it, and somehow we lost that information. So we did open a new one, and we're going to do our best to keep this dynamic and up to date and keep you informed through this. And I think the three main people that are posting are Rosemary Ray, Maria Rabello, and Jen Kwan. So thank you very much. And now for Mark, why we're all here. I first would like to honor Karen Beery for her recommendation to invite Mark. She was the one who planted the idea for this annual meeting. So I thank Karen very much. And also, just for your information, Mark gave me permission for us to include the PDF that he sent me about his bio. So when we post the video recording, you'll also be able to access that PDF. I'm just going to share a few things about Mark. 40 years ago, he graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo with a degree in graphic communication. During his tenure there, he worked as the student curator of the Shakespeare Press Printing Museum at the college. This experience developed his passion for printing history and for using that history to inspire others, which he's doing to this very day. So a few benchmarks in his history. In 1988, he became a founding member of the International Print Museum, now in Carson, California. Through the years, he's received numerous awards. 1995, it was a Pioneer of the Year award. In 1997, he created the Innovative Museum on Wheels program, in which they visited 2,800 schools throughout California and Arizona. In 2011, he developed workshops for both Boys and Girl Scouts, helping some 3,500 scouts earn merit badges in graphic arts, paper, and book arts, along with introducing young students to the printing industry. In 2021, he established the Book Arts Institute at the Print Museum, 4,000 square feet of a teaching lab. In 2023, the American Printing History Association presented Mark with the Institutional Laureate Award. Mark has a long, rich history with San Diego, and we're really thrilled and thank him very much for coming today to speak to us.
Fantastic. I think I'm on. Nancy, thank you for that introduction. And the honor is really mine. You guys are quite a distinguished group, and what you guys create and are keeping alive, not just in San Diego. I'm impressed by how broad your membership is. So as a fellow nonprofit person, you guys are doing it right. So good job. But thank you for allowing me to give you guys a talk here about the recent activities here at the museum. There's two parts to my talk here, and it's two typographic collections that we've been in the process of saving. And both are large, enormous, and very important, and a bit overwhelming, but I'm not shy of getting overwhelmed. So I dive into these things, and it's been the joy of my life here to actually devote my life to Gutenberg and the preservation and the use of printing history. So the part of the story here that you're going to see certainly on the second half is it's really not enough to save things and put them into a building in an institution, even in a building at home, because things can get lost. Things need to be used and seen and appreciated and used to inspire. And I'm dedicated to making that happen. So, and having reached the age of 58, I've been running printing museums now for 40 years. So I'm sure there's a real job out there for me somewhere, but I am not looking anytime soon. So in the talk here, I've actually got two parts to my talk. The first one is going to be the Dave Peat Typographic Collection in Indianapolis. And I've got like a whole bunch of slides to show you. And if we have time, I've got even a short video of walking through an insane collector's house. Dave Peat was the preeminent collector of 19th century and early 20th century printing material. He was the god above all gods in collecting, and he didn't just collect printing stuff; he collected stuff. So of course, printing presses and a few old cars, and that's kind of typical. Steam engines, everybody collects steam engines and then starts a steam engine museum or railroad museum. And of course, spark plugs. I mean, that was new to me, that there's a whole group of people that collect spark plugs. And I don't know what you do with them, but you look at your spark plugs and that's, I guess, exciting. So Dave collected and collected. And he was passionate about so many things. It was my privilege to actually know Dave personally for probably 33 years. Which was definitely not long enough. So he passed away on December 25th, 2020, and he was 88 years old, or young, however you want to phrase that. And he did make use of all of those years. And his hobbies and his passions were large, all-encompassing. Just ask the family. They will tell you about how all-encompassing all of his hobbies and passions were. That was part of the discussion in trying to acquire his collection. And we were in the process of trying to acquire his collection for years and years, trying to get him to make a decision and move in that direction. And he never actually made that decision before he died. So then it became a different tactic of negotiation and talking with the family and stuff. And then raising a lot of money. But happy to do that. So what I'm going to try and do right now is let me see if I can't share my screen and get this up and going. And it comes down to share screen. Let's do that. And I'm now sharing screen, but I need to see my photos. Look at that. I'm a Luddite and I love it. So forced into this technology garbage. My press will be working and all. So there's Dave. He established the Pete Press in 1960. He was actually, he was an engineer. He actually has patents on the telephone and the pay telephone, and worked for all the labs there in Indianapolis. And but then on the side, he collected things, and he got hooked into printing and type. And he always thought he was too late to actually collect the good stuff. And then he started in that. And the press that he is in the photo right there is the same press that he used his entire life on, that's pictured to the right as well. And I'll say a little side amazing note, guys might know that press, those that are printers, that's a Pearl press. And I actually have a Pearl press here right behind me in my shop. A number 11 Pearl. When he got it, the frame on this thing was cracked. And if you know about cast iron, what it takes to repair cast iron, Dave did it correctly. You have to heat the whole thing very carefully, cool it, fix it, cool it. And he had over 1 million impressions on that press, all the way up to the end. Over 1 million. And he was still running it even at the end. So, and when he died in the last 3 years, he was technically blind. And so he was actually printing blind on the press. So if you know the term blind embossing, that's the way to get to it. So put your fingers in a press and not be able to see. But he knew the sound of his press. So just to give you guys a heads up, and I've got somebody out there is going to be my timekeeper, because I got a lot of stuff to share. I got a lot of great photos and images and all that. I'm going to probably have to move through them somewhat quickly on some of the times there, but you'll be able to go back on the videos. But there was so much to see, so much visual material, so much typography and graphics, and it's overwhelming. And it's still overwhelming to me when I go back and look at the slides and the images and stuff. So there's Dave in his shop in the house in Indianapolis. And he built the house. It's a multi-layer house, and the shop was in this great, lower level room that had access to the yard, at least for about 3 years, until he blocked the door with wood type. So that's kind of happens, these things. And what you start seeing here is, here's a working shop. And when you see the pictures of at the end, it was almost impossible to print in his shop. But all the tools and the material that he has there. One of Dave's real passions was type, 19th century type. He fell in love with that, and he started trying to collect it. And as I mentioned earlier, he didn't think there was any left for him to collect. And what ended up being in his collection here is 4,000 fonts of Victorian type. Let that sink in on you. 4,000. And not just, a bunch of Helvetica. And I know there's some lovers of Helvetica out there, but just gorgeous type. And then he also loved the type specimen books. That was his real passion as well. Collecting 19th and early 20th century type specimen books. The first book that caught his attention and his first purchase was this book here. And it's the Pocket Book of Specimens from the Franklin Type Foundry there in Cincinnati. And that started him down the rabbit hole of collecting type specimen books. And he would hunt for these everywhere. And he would show up at all sorts of events, gatherings of steam engine people, for tractor people, spark plug people. They all knew Dave, and Dave would always be announcing things that he was collecting and interested in. So he knew how to get the word out before there was social media. I mean, in his day, social media was, you talk to a lot of people and you get your name in front of them. And but that book was the start of it, and it's a gorgeous one. Where I'm standing at was the entrance to his shop, and it took me a while to find or remember where the book was after we acquired the collection. There's that little hole right there next to all of his type specimens. I know his type fonts that are in the boxes. And all the family knew that if anything happened in the house, you would run into the fire and you grab my Franklin specimen book. And he wrote in there, this is my very first book. The specimen book collection ended up becoming close to 400, 350 type specimen books. And these are really hard to collect now. They were hard to collect back then. And now they're extremely expensive. Let's take a look at some of the Hamilton wood type. This is the large one. We have a little bit of that type in there. So this alone as a collection is priceless. Nobody will be able to duplicate this level of a collection again. If it hasn't been collected already, it's almost impossible to put together this many 19th century books. On the ornaments. I mean, I can curl up in bed at night with my ornaments here. It's just a great night. My wife still wonders about me. Mostly American, but also European type specimen books. That's a large specimen book. That's some gorgeous stymie. That's Mary Pete, his wife, hiding behind the Hamilton type specimen book. She did not want to be taken a picture of. You'll see her I got some good photos of her. She was a great soul. She's still alive. She's a great soul that traveled with Dave to all these places, was engaged in all the clubs and in the collecting. I don't think she knew there's a lot of stuff in the house. I don't think she knew how much stuff, because it wasn't just that shop. It was the basement, the garage, and more. I mean, isn't this just amazing? It's like, oh. And then manufacturer's books. Golding is who made his press, the Pearl Press. I love that book. If you're not sure what the term, if you've ever heard that term, tramp printer, a tramp printer is one who traveled from town to town and picked up jobs. And I've actually met a couple of tramp printers from the 20th century that would go around, especially if you're in the union. You could use your union card and show up and get jobs there. I mean, who needs a romance novel when you have that? Then equipment, books, rare wood type books. And, you know, he's got a lot of this type and ornaments in the collection. Not all of this, but wow. That's a work of art. And what it took to actually put this together with individual pieces of metal type, that's an insane amount of work. These are they were known as art printers, and they would this artistic work. They were skilled in doing this, but it was very expensive. And if you count how many colors are on that page with perfect registration. That's the inside of the stymie book. Your attention, please. You gotta love that cover. A world filled with type. That right there represents the type specimen books. So the first thing I did on it after we negotiated the deal for the collection was to get the books packed up and stored. He had them up on the second floor of the house in bookshelves that had collapsed on themselves because of the weight, and he couldn't even get to some of this stuff. It was very hard for him to get around in his latter years, and he lost a lot of his mobility, not to mention his sight. When you wonder, how do you get 4,000 fonts of type in your house? That's how you do it. So you get them, these are specially designed boxes that the collectors of type got together and had a box manufacturer manufacture them so that they have an inside, very strong inside box, sometimes with a flap and even like a mini type case inside. And then you could store your type tightly and efficiently on its side as a box. You get it labeled, and then you can store it. So he had probably about 3,000 of the fonts in boxes. Every available space was used. And you're going to start to see how to use 100% of your space. Well, I'd say even more like 120%. He had things hanging from the ceiling and all. And then every time he printed a job, you'll see on the side of the boxes, once he's using the job, he'll mark on the box when he used it, and then he would print on gummed paper and attach a sample of it to the box. And Dave was a user of everything around him. I mean, he saved envelopes, paper, gummed things, and he utilized it because he just didn't have access. You know, he wasn't going out and wanting to spend a lot of money on paper. So there was so much paper in the house. There we go. There's a close-up on some of the fonts. So our challenge too in getting this all packed up was keeping it as organized as possible, but the weight is tremendous. It's a lot of weight in these boxes. He had to have specially designed shelves that would just fit those boxes. One of the earlier uses was cigar boxes. And if you notice the name on this box, Dave Norton, Dave was another collector of 19th century type. So the Dave Norton and Pete, this was one that we acquired Dave Norton's collection up in Syracuse some years back, and then Dave, the major collector, came up there with me, helped me with the acquisition, and his part of the deal was he gets a few fonts of type. And when somebody helps you like that, they don't choose the junk. He chose a couple really nice fonts of wood type, and then some of these, and but I'm young. I'll get it all back. So here I got back my Dave Norton Hercules type and all. But the cigar boxes are not as good as those other boxes. Then we have probably about 800 to 1,000 fonts of wood type and borders. Just drawer after drawer after drawer. And we're finding it, and somebody got into boxes. Some were just in weird places. So you saw that in the Hamilton specimen page. How's that for a border?
These are amazing.
Oh, that was just, I mean, when I say that there was like 800, it was just like, you get to the point where you just have to look at it, have a moment, put it into the box, move it, keep moving through. So there's so much of this material, and you got to love how he used boxes like you wouldn't believe. Dave never threw away a box. He never met a box he didn't like. And they were all over the house, all over the garage. I mean, odd shaped boxes. When I would come out there to help him declutter his life and his shop, he actually let me in, which is a rare thing. He wouldn't let anybody into the house at the end in the last 10 years for the most part, because it was such a mess. And he had so many boxes, and there was nothing in them. I mean, like, I don't know, your steak boxes, Omaha steak boxes over. He's like, I would just leave them in the grass, let them get wet, then step on them and just keep destroying as many boxes as I could, then throw it in the truck that's heading back to California. So you didn't see boxes going in the trash. But this was my favorite. I mean, that would be like marketing genius to sell wood type in Russell Stover heart boxes. So yeah, this will be coming soon to a store near you. Nothing says I love you like a box of wood type. And I'll look in the box up above, the mirror of typography. So he also collected internal house organs, journals, 19th century. He had one of the larger collections of 19th century trade journals. So we've got just hundreds and hundreds of those in the collection. There's Dave with his wife, Mary. When they had an exhibit of his material at the University of Indianapolis. And Catherine Fries runs the book arts program there. And they were great helpers and supporters of Dave and helping him to get the shop a little more organized and going in there almost on a weekly basis. But they put up an exhibit there. You can see Dave pointing to one of his main projects every year, which was his annual calendar. And he actually managed to do this for 50 straight years. And the calendar printed on half-size sheets. And he would highlight in his collection or the type that he had acquired that year. This was his way of trying to accomplish his life goal of having a specimen book of all of his type, which is a great goal to have. It's almost impossible to accomplish. And still, some of this type is still standing in forms that he never put away, which is another problem we have. How much type did not get put away? But they would 2-hole punch the top. They would, tie it up with the yarn, and that was a family project. Which I heard from the family how much they loved doing this every year. The kids were conscripted into this. But Dave would also on these pages announce. He would send these calendars to people all over the country, both printers, collectors, people that are in different hobbies and fields, and he'd always be announcing that he's looking for type, 19th century specimen books, wood type, spark plugs. He also collected antique fireworks. I do not recommend anybody get into antique fireworks and store them into a container on somebody's property. He got a surprise one day from a phone call from the local sheriff and fireman that little kids had gotten into his trailer and started to light off these really dangerous fireworks. Dave got over his firework collection after that. The other thing he collected in there is toy presses that were sold and to kids all across the country in the 19th and early 20th century. Actually, they were doing small toy presses even into the 1980s. With Kelsey, it was the one that everybody would know. Well, these are all the early ones, and the best thing about them is the boxes. And you can never find the boxes. So Dave has 200. We acquired like 200 plus of these small presses, all packed in there. So if you have to have 200 presses, you want to have them as really small presses. And the labels were all just so great. And the cabinet they're in is actually a late 19th century cigar cabinet, which itself was made right up to the ceiling. And we had to figure out how to get this thing out, take the cabinet out too. Look at all those. These are printing miniature books, guys. So if anybody wants to use one and print a miniature book, let me know. Print little small sheets. Different shapes and all that. Elizabeth Harris, who was a curator at the Smithsonian, did a great book on these rail presses and small presses. It's amazing how many different varieties of the same thing there are. There's the cigar cabinet. Most of that below is all boxes of wood type or boxes of cuts. He had thousands and thousands of cuts, magnesium, copper, zinc, just because he would use those images then on his calendar pages and everything else. So there's just a lot. And this is giving you a sense now. You're starting to see a little visual of the shop. This is after I cleaned it up. The first visit there was so much clutter, you could not even see the ground. It took me a day just to realize that there was actually beautiful tile on the ground, trying to declutter it. Here's one of those. Look how happy that boy is finding his printing press there. Some of the boxes say, There's no better way to educate your youth than by giving them a little printing press. Ben Franklin. A lot of times these things show up now. Of course, they show up on eBay now, and you open them up and they're like sometimes barely even used. I mean, little kids working with small half-size type. They even have bronze dusting powder in there. That really builds your immune system. A little bit of bronze dusting powder over your printing. There's an early Kelsey. I bet your Kelsey doesn't look like that. 1870s. This is a really fun one in that just so you can print faster, you have a hand crank on that little wheel to open and close the press. Like how fast, and you have to hand ink with a brayer on the flat surface on the top and hand ink your type, put your paper in, and then crank it. So how fast do you need to go on one of these things? That's probably my favorite. He loved this press. It's called the Low Press. It has that cone-shaped cylinder, dates back to the Civil War, and there were 5 different sizes of this, and he had 3 or 4 of the sizes in there. So these boxes of type were like all over, and then they were all stacked. If you look in the picture here, you start to get a sense of he made use of every flat space to stack things. And then, of course, at some point, your stack falls over, and then you build another stack. And here's where he was able to brag about having 4 sizes. I mean, it's hard enough to get one of these presses. They're extremely rare. So 2 were Dave's, and Ed Reagan, who comes into the story. He's a machine remover and a collector there in Indiana. Hard to see that, but it's if anybody in the crowd here is into Kelsey made all sorts of equipment for the home use of setting up the boys and girls as printers. This is, if you look at it on the side, it's the Eagle Cutter. I had never even seen one of these before. Now we have 2. Just a little guillotine cutter, hand lever cutter. So getting a sense, Dave loved the stuff, all the artifacts, the things. So everywhere you looked was something interesting to look at. The poles, the handles for the cases, that's a rabbit hole itself, getting into that. More type in different types of cases, more presses. Gotta love the curtain. And then came my job as we had to declutter the shop and then start to get it packed up. All that small stuff. You can imagine what it takes to get all that small stuff packed carefully, organized in some way so you're not losing everything, and then get it out of the house and into the shipping. This is my good friend Joe Fazio, who's in Temecula. This guy is a master machinist, knows how to work on both presses, and he's been printing since he was age 12. So, and he's a collector. So I'm the Pied Piper for getting people to help me in my projects here. So he came out, and for the cost of food, I got a lot of good work out of Joe. Great guy. But you see the surface spaces all around there. And everywhere you look, there was something interesting to see, even if it wasn't printing related. It could just be the labels of things. Again, this is when we had already cleaned it. And so Joe did a great job he knows how to pack smalls in there. Those are the double doors behind him there that in 1969, Dave blocked those doors with 2 tall cabinets of wood type. And then we had to clear it out. We found the floor, this beautiful tiled floor, which I'm sure is asbestos, but it's gorgeous, goes into the garden. And after we cleaned out the shop and got it to where it looked like Dave's shop from the 1960s, I took Mary, his widow, around the garden, down the garden path to the outside of these doors, and I had her walk in. And we have a video of this, which we're not showing today, but we have a video of her walking in. And I said, Mary, when's the last time you walked through these doors? She goes, I don't know. I think about 1969. So she got to walk in, and then she got to see his shop the way it used to be. I wanted to honor Dave before we started dismantling all the equipment and everything to see what this shop, when it was a functioning, working shop, and the collection didn't get away from him. This is part of the garage. There's wood type cabinets to the ceiling. I don't think he was able, we had to clear out the whole space there to even walk back there, but we kept finding wood type everywhere. I mean, everywhere. One of his early forms that he never tore apart and put away. But this was one of his his poster announcing his shop. And he would print it for people on his Washington hand press, which is pictured in there. An original electrode type on an angle with his type in it. So he'd print these things. He made use of this stuff. That's what it was there for. So there's the shop cleaned where you can see the floor. The rare Cincinnati Washington hand press. A paper cutter on the right. In the middle is his very rare Cincinnati Type Founders Globe platen press. And there underneath that light way back there was his favorite, the Pearl number 11. Composing sticks on the left, hanging from the ceiling, paper on the right, down below, envelopes everywhere, cuts everywhere. Of course, you can't, you got to collect all the other stuff. So all the line gauges, the rulers. There's a Hamilton wood type line gauge. The pulls. That's from Chicago, from BB&S, Barnhart Brothers and Spindler Type Foundry. And that was one of their giveaways, the bookends with Ben Franklin. He's looking a little aged in these bookends. I wonder if you guys know what that is. I'm sure some of you might. It's got a sharp edge to it. That's for die cutting a stack of in a certain shape. That's a heart-shaped stack. And they'd hammer it right through the paper there. Paper printing press. There's Dave when he was blind running his press. That's his warning to anybody. He'd use popsicle sticks and tongue depressors as ink knives, and he had ink everywhere, stuff everywhere. It's one of those shops where he has everything and he has nothing. Meaning, I tried printing in his shop. We did it, but it was really hard finding everything. Dave knew where everything was. That's a rare Army press from the Civil War. So all the generals and the officers would have a team of printers that would travel around with them to print the orders for the grunts. Oh, and this, anybody who visited Dave Pete's home in Indianapolis as a printer, this was Mecca. Everybody, when the hobby would gather there, they would all line up outside of Dave's bathroom because you'd sit and nobody would come out. Just because you sit there and all the walls, all the space was filled with artifacts and printing related stuff and bindery tools and patterns, wooden patterns for casting the Kelsey press that he had acquired. And of course, there in the lower left, that magazine or the book right down there is the Morgan Type Collection. We're going to talk about that next at the Smithsonian. So there you can dream about new type that you want to go acquire from somebody else. You bookbinders should like that. What's going to be fun here, and one of our instructors at the museum is Jen Graves, who's on your board. She's one of our great instructors doing bookbinding classes. And I'm going to recreate Dave's bathroom there at the Book Arts Lab. And you'll have a chance when you come up there to take a class. I hope you get out of the bathroom because other people will be lined up wanting to enjoy the experience. Everybody remembered that visit. And then there's just stuff everywhere. I mean, these are just great paper boxes and the design work of these things. So, of course, I'm a collector too, so I can't throw these things out. Kelsey Press Company. He had a lot of material from Kelsey. But the printed papers, and there were boxes and boxes of stuff, and stuff that was on the floor and stuff that was crumpled on the shelf, and it was everywhere. And we also had the basement. You know, the basement going even lower was filled up with more of this material, hanging on all the walls. This is when your family knows you've lost it, you know. Stenciling, printers. A Kelsey ink reducer there on the left. And then you get books that are just old books that are not related, but I'm sure that's a good read there. The Swine Breeder's Journal. One of you should have to rebind this for us. That'd be a good project. And of course, photos, his train photos and all that. He was really one of the major collectors and organizers of railroad museums. And that's the working part of the shop, you know, where you're supposed to be able to set type. And we would clean and then and it gets cluttered again. Then we clean it, then clutter, and then clean, clutter. Notice how all that, I mean, every space is used with something. There was type everywhere. And there's a lot of pied type, a lot of type that on the ground, I'd be down there on my hands and knees in the basement, picking up more type as if I need more type with what's upstairs. There's one of our other helpers. That's Jay Endress, who was there in Indiana. And I put him to work. He has a museum and collection. We're trying to, and something to consider is how do you move galleys and galleys of type without it completely falling apart? So we had to wrap every galley and then put it back into the galley cabinet after it was on a skid or a pallet. We're talking 600, 700 galleys we're having to do this to. All these drawers filled up with supplies, parts, interesting things. You could barely walk around anywhere in the shop. He made use, even when the floor was cleared, it was still tight to walk around. There's Joe. Some of you might recognize him. The stylish coon hat. That's Kevin Bradley, who was in LA for 5 years with the Church of Type. And now he's there in Tennessee. He's got a fantastic shop. We've got to look him up. Voodoo Rocket Press. So he came up and he has a collection of antique 19th century type. And the problem was every time you open up a box, you're just looking at it and you stop. And the goal is to keep working. He was quite happy just being able to look at the type and all. More papers. Hey, a Pearl Press right there. Get a discount if you pay in cash. There's one of his promo cards. Wanted antique spark plugs. Also printers, type, and catalogs, specimen books, antique telephones. He worked for Western Electric. Railroad information. And he, like on this, he bought or acquired from somebody the stock with the image on it. And in the day, they would do that. A lithographer would print the material, and then you imprint what you want on the right. So Dave had a whole bunch of this kind of stuff in the shop. This is down in the basement. This is clean when we started down there. So that's what that Washington press looked like with stuff all over it. There's the shop. And there it's clean. So all that small stuff takes a lot of time to get that carefully packed up. When he first acquired the 60s, that's his son, Brian, who's about my age. And Dave affectionately referred to him as his printer's devil. And young Brian there at about age 4, always, at the time, he thought that was just so great. Dad's giving me my job title and my name. And he had him sit down there by the press. And there's Brian, who's one I negotiated with the family, sitting back down by it. He said it took him a few years to realize what it meant to be the printer's devil. What that meant was he had to pick up all the type that his father pied on the ground or somewhere else. His job was to clean up after Dad. And he didn't like that anymore. So take care of your family. Be very nice to them if you have a collection. Here's the garage. And we would blow out the garage and then try and get it organized and then put it back in, and then it blows it out again. Because all those boxes, as a curator, you have to realize all those boxes have something important in them. And or might not have some, but you have to go through all these things. And I had to take a whole bunch of this, make fast decisions, just put it on a pallet. I'll go through it. It's not even all printing related, but there's things for the railroad people. There's things for the antique car people. There's something in there that needs to be saved. And it's not a bright, sunny day. There's Mary. That sign I just love. This place was never clean. I would go out there and help Dave get it organized and get things in, because all the boxes are different shapes. They all fall all over. I said, Dave, get one of these rolling racks at Office Depot. We'll get all the stuff in the boxes. But he just would never throw away anything. And I get them organized, and then I come back and it's all disorganized again. There's one of his signs they would show up with. Galley cabinet just filled with just average type for him. But beautiful stuff was in there. If you look in the upper left, that's the sense. There's his box storage. So we kind of clean it out and then go back in and fill it up again with stuff. And the concrete on the floor kept disintegrating, maybe due to the weight of all the stuff. It helped to have the dumpster there. We kept loading up the dumpster, and Brian kept throwing things into there. I think they had about 4 or 5 dumpster runs. And Mary kept us all going by, this is her space. She had all the cookbooks in there and everything else, but she would just leave sweets for us. As much as we tried to say no, every time we walked by, she kept fattening us up and giving us the strength and energy we needed. She loved the company. Great lady. There we are, open up that door for one of the first times. There's the rare Globe printing press, platen press, which I believe is one of a kind right now. I don't think another one has survived. I love the floor. Of course, when they sell the house, they'll probably rip the floor out. And in the middle of winter was one of our moves, getting all the equipment out. It was literally 28 degrees at high noon. So, and we had to figure out how to get these machines out. There's Dave's press. We have that press now on permanent loan to University of Indianapolis. In their book arts lab, they set up a nice small printing shop in honor of Dave with his material. Thanks to Catherine there and her team. Here we are. How do you get a Washington press? Young men get machines into their basements where they're dumb and strong. And then when you're old and don't have the strength, you got to figure out how to get things out. Ed Reagan's a machinery mover, so we devised a method. The press was the height of the door. So if you look underneath the leg of the press, what do you see? Galleys. And what we did was he hooked the cable up to the front of the press, up to the press, and we oiled the floor, and the cable had to make a right angle turn down the pathway to go up to the driveway. So we had two pulleys helping to control the cable, and the winch powering it from the trailer up on the driveway with a 90-degree right angle turn. There we go. You got to know what you're doing to make this happen. And pick up the press. Moving out the next one. That was that area in the garage I was standing in. That's what it first looked like. He had presses in the yard. Mary is a fantastic gardener. And so we had presses around there. We had there's a shed in the back. We call it the bat shed because the bats and raccoons were living in it. But in there was a whole bunch of wood type. And we risked our lives going in there, getting the wood type out. That was the last piece I was able to print with Dave when I went to his shop there. APA is the Amalgamated Printers Association, and we have an annual gathering called the Ways Goose. Dave, member number 247. I'm 662, and I'm the current president. But that was a lot of fun printing with him on the press, creating one of our keepsakes. Created by Rich Hopkins, one of our members, honoring Dave on his 80th. So he made it to 88. Two semi-truckloads coming out of there. There's his shop. There's that corner. So we're going to recreate an exhibit of Dave's material and his type, both get it available. The goal here is to get this so that we can share the visual side of it, but I really want to set it up so that we have, by invitation, having artists and fellow printers come in and make use of the collection and create keepsakes and all. So, and use the type, use his material, and keep it alive. So, all right. And I'll just let you show, I'm going to do just a short portion of this video here so you guys can walk through the shop. Let me see if this worked for me. Home and shop, Pete's Press. Let me share the screen. December 2021. You can see the intensity of Dave as a collector. Take you on a tour. I'm Mark Barbour, the Director and Curator of the International Printing Museum. Sorry, I'm trying to get this on to full screen. Dave was the foremost collector of 19th century type. Oops, lost it. Type specimen books. The Luddites at work here. Printing material. This is how you pack a lot of material. I'm sorry. Every box is a file. Hold on one second there. Move that. There we go. Tightly packed. Galleys full of type and ornaments. Every inch of space is used. Wood type hanging from the ceiling. Modern telephone. Paper share. There's no open flat spaces. Yeah, so this is what we came into when we first walked in. But I had to clear the floor so I could not kill myself walking around. So. Even something as rare. Look at that type case. That's a very rare and unusual type case. It was called a perfection case. Challenge is getting all this stuff back into boxes and prepped. Beautiful type everywhere. I've spent already 2 days just trying to clean up a little bit. This is what it looks like after it's been cleaned. Boxes and boxes of cuts. I'm not quite sure exactly how many fonts of type there are of wood. All right. I kind of gave a little visual on that. So there is the peat collection. That's there. It's now all at our storage space and in process of trying to get organized again. So, and how are we doing there, Nancy, on our time fast run through the Smithsonian?
I think so.
Or did I-
I'm
Okay.
enthralled. I just, and
All right.
we're just an hour. We're just at 3:07. So please.
Okay, I'll go as fast as I can here for you guys. I appreciate your patience on it. It's just so much good stuff. And I can't. I see Lynn asking a question. I don't know if I can answer questions while I'm going. I'm not that savvy at this.
Oh, we can throw some out. She just says,
We'll ask that at that.
let's see. She asked, how long did it take to organize and clear out Dave's space?
Oh, it took us 3 trips with several of us. I'd say with 3 people, 15 days. And I work them hard. I mean, we work until we drop, and then I revive them with whiskey, and then we go a little more. And that's how we work it. Okay, so let's get this one down. So if someone can ask me another question while I just get up the other slideshow.
Monica, do you want to ask the question that you had before?
Ask it to me verbally, yeah, if you could.
Yep.
Oh, well, I had seen one of the presses, the Pearl Press, and I had asked if I think I've seen something similar for sale at the museum.
Yes, we probably have 7 Pearl presses right now. Not all ready to go out the door, but it's my favorite press personally because that's the one that I use on a regular basis.
It's sort of like a
And
small size meant for small
it's
projects.
a 7 by 11, prints real fast, real easy. It's not meant to do deep impression printing, but it is just a fantastic press. It's lightweight, so you can get it in and out of a shop. I can use a hand truck to move one of those guys in. So it's a great press. I highly recommend it. And the Model 3 is the old style without a throw off, but to me is a more beautiful press. And the Model 11 could have a treadle, or usually it was motorized. And I know of 2 right now that are for sale in Southern California. One, Joe Fazio, who's a master machinist, he has 2 of them available, and they are in perfect condition.
Do you have any workshops on using those?
No, not yet. I'm
Okay.
trying to. We are doing workshops. I'm the one supposed to be doing some of the platen press workshops. So I do kind of one a year, or I do private instructions on them. So by this spring and early summer, we should be going on that. So
Good to know. Thank you.
okay, let me jump in on let me share my screen. Oops, let me stop the share for a second. Let me get me on view. I want to get onto full screen. And you educators do this much faster. So at the same time that this was happening in 2021, I got the phone call from the Smithsonian that process of deaccessioning their typographic matrix collection. And here I'm pictured outside their warehouse building in Suitland, Maryland. The gentleman there with me is Frank Romano, who runs the printing museum up in Massachusetts, in Haverhill. And we both got contacted and offered parts of that collection. What that collection consisted of was, and what they offered me first was just the linotype matrix collection. And so on the linotype casting machine, the matrices that linotype made in brass for casting lines of type, the linotype company donated to them their physical library of all their matrices, like almost unused, like 10,000 fonts in brass. And that was one collection. The second part of the collection was the American Type Founders matrices for casting the individual type, which is about 5,000 fonts. And the third thing was the type from the Morgan Type Collection out of New York that they had acquired. And Frank was offered that. We were both hoping that it included the gorgeous wood type collection from them. So here we are in that warehouse building. And this space has been inactive. The storage space for the graphic arts collection remained inactive since they sort of mothballed their collection back in 1997, 98. And there since that time. They had been organizing their matrix collections, as well as the Morgan Type collection. What had happened here was that this was not a decision on the curator's part there at the Smithsonian, who were in charge of this collection. It was the decision makers, what I lovingly refer to as the grand poobahs, higher up the food chain. And when I asked enough questions, it came to, when we were first in there, if you notice all the plastic that's on there, they were concerned about lead dust. So based on the fact that there was lead dust in this building, and the building also had to be remediated years ago from asbestos. This is an old military facility with a bunch of these buildings or bunkers, whatever you're going to call them. You couldn't go into this space during the working years unless you had a full bunny suit on and the mittens on your hands and on your hood on your head and boots on your feet and stuff. So I'm asking Steve, one of the guys in charge of the facility there, and he says, yeah, there's a lead dust. I said, oh, really? I mean, we're talking mostly, this is all brass matrices that were used in the casting process. And I was absolutely entertained when he followed up that question with, or he followed up my question with the second part. He says, oh, and lead vapors. So the grand poobahs at the Smithsonian were worried about lead vapors. And then I turned to him, I said, so basically they want this building in the space, right? He said, yep. So they're going to be tearing down these buildings to build up another Taj Mahal building for the Smithsonian and creating, I'm not sure, I think it'll be either storage or possibly even an offsite museum space. But that meant that all this material had to go. And had I not been there at the right time and raised my hand, this would have all been lost. So it's a lot of material. So, but they wrapped everything, shrouded it all with duct tape and plastic. They used a lot of duct tape and a lot of plastic. There's Steve, who's been managing this facility for years and years. Good guy. You know, you can imagine how frustrating it is when you've been dealing with material at different levels, and then to have people way up higher than you making a decision that does things that you see are not in the best interest of that material. So here we are. This is building 18 in the storage space. Those cabinets right there were all the Hamilton specially designed cabinets to hold the matrices for casting the type, which you're going to see. Well, thinking they were going to keep this collection long-term, they took all of the matrices out of those cabinets and put them into their own custom-made metal trays that went into their own custom cabinets. But all the drawers remain, and these cabinets will be saved. There are the matrix, the custom galleys that they made, which of course fit into nothing that we have. But I've got thousands of these trays filled up with the matrices. 96 point there. I don't know what font it is. Matrix for casting a logo for ATF. So we have now 5,000 fonts. And what's nice about this part of the collection is that we'll actually be able to, on some of this type, be able to recast the type, some of the fonts that are in here. So we're going to be setting up a revival casting program from the ATF matrices. And it includes ornaments, borders, logos, type. And all of this was heading to the melter. Our typographic heritage. Pretty sad to think how close we are at any given time of losing history. There's part of my other team here. On the left there is my local contact in Washington, D.C., Ian Edelson, who's also a printer. He's got a Pearl press in his small little apartment house there. And Lloyd is our Canadian connection. The Canadians came down to help save American printing history. Here's for the Canadians. Lloyd he runs the Printers Northwest up on Facebook. So he helps keep that whole area organized, and he loves to come out, and he came out twice with me and helped in packaging up all this type. So the galleys and galleys of type there on the left, we have the Morgan type collection in the bay right behind me. And on the right of Lloyd is those cabinets, double stacked, are filled with 10,000 fonts of linotype. It's like a wall of solid brass. So here's the Morgan type. I mean, this is kind of crazy. So they had taken all this time. They're volunteers there. One of the key ones was one of our printers and typecasters who was there in Maryland and is now up in the Northeast, Jim Walzak, who got all this type out of flimsy boxes from Morgan and gallied them up and then tied them professionally like a real typographer, tightly tied, and put them on galleys. So we had to consolidate the tied type onto different galleys. But I mean, if you look at the proof there, that is just gorgeous material. And they pulled proof. So this one is nicely organized, but it's not very functional to set type from the galleys like this. We have to get all this into the boxes again, the collector's boxes. There's that type it was holding. Howden. That's some great stuff. We would all just, every time we find something, you'd hear a gasp of air, and then everybody would run over to see what you got, what you found. Treasure after treasure after treasure. I mean, you can only take a second to look at this stuff. There's the casting matrices from ATF. I mean, those are work of art. We're going to be able to cast those. Revive that font. So we're already setting up that program. That looks like just a standard galley cabinet, there in the middle. That's from ATF, that red top. That holds the trays, special trays of matrices that are solid brass in there. Has to hold it. That thing is made with cast iron. That is the heaviest cabinet you have ever seen. What it took for us to disassemble it and then even lift the pieces, it was crazy. Now we'll take a look at some of the matrices here. What an ampersand. Look at it for a second. Got to move on. There's the membership of the APA. Now, keep in mind that that is cast by ATF. That's not a cut. It's cast. It's 104 point or more. That's big. There's our other helpers that came down. John Barrett brought the New England crew down. On the left there is Sharon Kumler. Right, we got Joanne. and Grant is there with Sharon. Those are all the trays of matrices. There in the back, you can see is that's all Foundry type there on the right-hand side. So it's another 2,500 fonts of Victorian type. There's John Barrett, letterpress things in Chicopee, Massachusetts. He outworked all of us. Those are the hands of a master. He earned every crimpled dent and everything else in his nails. So this, between these two acquisitions, 4,000 Victorian fonts from Dave Pete and another 2,500 fonts from the Morgan collection, I will admit that it's just a little bit obscene. But I'm okay with that, but they need to be saved. More matrices. And we have about 1,500 fonts from Dave Norton. Wow. Every once in a while, you drop something. Unfortunately, it's usually the small stuff you end up dropping. So Sharon dropped that one. She actually took it back and then fonted it back up again. But you do hear that in the shop. On one of the matrices, the tray that came out, this was the letter that came with it from American Type Foundry saying they received this, they lent them out to be cast. But just coming across that important information, contemporary to the use of the type from Foundry A. And then we have Val Lucas, who's there in Maryland. Val is one of our young typecasters. She's been learning from Jim Walczak how to run the casting machines. She actually kinds in metal type her own fonts and border designs. She's also a graphic art, a book arts instructor and a bookbinder as well. She's one of our great ones. So she's central part of our casting revival program. So she has some of the fonts we've been doing test casting with. That's when she discovered that letter wrapped inside the tray. The back of one of the matte cabinets. This one's from BB&S. So in our type history, you have most of your type is ATF, American Type Founders, and they're a conglomeration of all the foundries of the 19th century, or most of them. Then slowly they acquired everybody else. One of the last ones was BB&S out of Chicago. The cabinets were made in 1930. And then on the other side of the warehouse, we'd have just pallets filled up with the drawers for all the cabinets. So it's going to be a challenge. And they, of course, they're not all the same cabinet. They're different cabinets. So we're going to have to work on hard to match up the cases with the right cabinets. All those filled with linotype material. Notice the youthfulness of my volunteers. We had to take out every tray of brass matrices, starting at the top, going down, so we can disassemble the double stacked pallets. The total weight of all this material is about 30 to 35 tons. So you remove them one galley at a time, and then you get it down to the ground, get the cabinet down to the ground, then put it all back in. Just getting that cabinet down, given the age of my volunteers, was a little bit challenging. Nobody got hurt. There's the crew. You can see we've moved. This is when we finally finished at least getting the material organized enough for transport. Every galley that has an open end has to be wrapped. shrink wrapped. Caslon took good care of everybody at the Airbnb, fed them well, we drank well, we slept well. Unidentified.
Oh my gosh.
Would anybody like to see that cast?
Oh, yes.
Show of hands. And that, again, once that was uncovered, everybody came over with their cameras. It was a very happy working crew that understands the importance and the beauty of this material. Beautiful. Look at that ampersand up. Oh, and all the duct tape that's been on there for 25 years. The first thing we had to do was just unwrap all of the cabinetry. Great label on one of the cabinets. Another amazing font. Look at the M. I'm partial to the letter M.
Oh, wow.
There really wasn't much in the way of wood type here because essentially what they were doing was getting the material organized and moving over to another building, building 32. And once the grand poobahs pulled the rug out from underneath the graphic arts department and they weren't allowed back in the building, whatever made it to the other building was saved. Apparently, it became free of lead dust and lead vapors. And whatever was still left in the building was subject to deaccessioning, the process of removing the material from the collection. They moved all of the Morgan wood type to the other building. And that's really what the Museum of Printing really wanted the most. And once that wasn't in the deal, they weren't willing to didn't want to deal with all the rest of the metal type and everything else. So I was happy to just raise my hand and say, I'll take it all. But I did find one or two fonts of wood type that they missed. Did you get the reference on the size with the penny up there?
Yes.
What was that 4-line type? There we are moving the galley trays. Anybody who's moved a type cabinet knows what it means. You just move it one case at a time. And then, of course, we're doing this, and it was like a early spring, late winter day. I had a rainstorm, and then the sun. We came out on one of them, and then we had the rainbow over our building. I made it to the end of the rainbow. This is also, they have the aerospace in storage. It's that building, the Gerber building. So here we are heading over there to building 37. That's where all the treasures were at that we are not getting that, but I'm young enough. I'll still try and see if we can't get them and get the whole Morgan. The Morgan collection is about 5,000 fonts. So I'm getting half of it. And they already got some of the ATF mats. The early stuff is already in this other building, as well as that, submarine parts and torpedoes. And I believe the Ark of the Covenant is in one of these crates. We look for it. They love to crate things. Building 37. And then we headed over to go see the Morgan. There's that book that was in Dave's bathroom. The wood type. What an amazing collection of wood type. This is the Morgan collection. And here it is, and there's their storage system. That storage cabinet is about $2,500. Rolls like butter. And then the Macy's that made it over there. Steve back watching us all oodle over all this, and just it was like a church service eventually here. We all were on our knees in front of the type, paying homage to our heritage as printers and typographers and artists. That's the Canterbury mats for Kentface, which so many of us would like to see recast, including Eden. There's my Smithsonian crew, and we're actually now heading back down. We've been holding off as long as we can because I got to create. I mean, that's the other question: is where do you put all this material? I keep building some storage buildings on my storage property. Just finished another one, and we're getting it ready because they've called up and said the engineers are getting ready to tear down the building. So my crew will be down there. We're heading down there at the end of March 2024, the last week, and now I've got to get all that material onto, I think it's 2, it might end up being 3 semi truckloads, like 30,000 tons, not pounds, tons. And we'll get it in. But we're very, very pleased to be able to save this material for all of us. So there's the efforts of saving typographic history. It's a little insane. I mentioned earlier, it's a little obscene for all that material to be in one place. But I do recognize as a curator of this material and as a collector and a user of it, I kind of hit all those marks. It's an ongoing process. You would think that if you put something into the Smithsonian, it's going to be saved forever. You put it into any institution, you think it's going to be saved forever. It might not. There are more powers at work than just those that are interested in saving the collection. And when any institution loses their drivers and their supporters and their profits, things change. And so many in the audience here are working within institutions that have that same problem with the survival of their book arts labs and their programs and things. Things come and they go. Even when things are, there's people that don't want to see their stuff in an institution because of this problem. But then you have the challenge like with Dave Peat. Dave Peat's family, they were done with his collection. They lived his collection their entire life. And it was like, nope, show us the money. And they were willing to separate all that out and do things. I was like, no, all that needs to stay together. And I had already been raising money, and we just negotiated to the number. And I was like, and once Brian's sister said, oh, I'll take all the specimen books and I'll sell them on eBay. I'm like, no, you're not. Here's some more money. And then we settled on that number so I can keep that collection together. And it's an extremely valuable collection, far more than she thought it was worth. But it's on my shoulders to make sure that I build our institution in such a way that the stuff is preserved, the stuff is cared for, cataloged, organized, that it's made available in an appropriate way, and that the institution has an imprint on it that goes forward beyond me as best I can to continue the mission. And, God willing, I've still got some time to continue that imprinting. So there we have it. And I hope on your next visit down to the museum, certainly by the next Printers Fair next October, come down, you're going to see part of the Peat collection out on display, maybe even some of the Smithsonian. And we'll continue making use of all this and let you guys enjoy it. I mean, just to have a time to come up to the museum and pull out the specimen books. I mean, let me know if you'd like to be invited to a round table viewing of the rarest of rare specimen books. That would be fun.
That would be fun. Maybe we could do some sort of field trip, Gretchen, like we did to the Getty,
Absolutely. We will take care of you, and then even set up the presses so you can do some keepsakes on with the Peat or the Morgan collection. That would, so course, if you come up, you guys really need to bring a membership application. So I don't know why Jen Graves, who's there at the museum, has not presented me with a membership application. Jen, this is your one. I'd love the museum to really start to partner with you guys, with the San Diego Book Arts. There's so much there. We certainly should be exhibiting your annual exhibit, and my vision with our Book Arts Institute is to build this into a major facility for the book arts, and we're not done dreaming. So we just acquired a full papermaking studio from Cindy Iverson in Phoenix, so I'm picking that up in this spring. Why not? We were trying to set up the bookbindery. We got printmaking, screen printing lab set up. Of course, the letterpress lab, typecasting. That's because I have nothing to do, apparently. So here we go. So I thank you guys for putting up with me for so long. We've gone an hour and a half. So if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to stay on and answer questions. I know people will start dropping off, and Jen will be there on Wednesday. All right. Fantastic.
Do you have any questions for Mark? Please just feel free to speak up.
I think I answered the one that everybody asked me, which is, where are you going to put all this stuff? And frankly, as a collector, that's not the first question you ask. First thing is, go get it. Then you got to move it. Then you figure it out. So we're figuring it out.
Well, I know I can't thank you enough. This has been just wonderful, and thank you very much for making the time for us. It is really, really great, Mark. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I will be in touch. I think there might be some very interesting things that we can, who knows what we can put together. That would be wonderful.
Looking forward to it. Oh, I think we have a question. Is a hand up? No. You're saying goodbye.
We're clapping.
Right. Excellent. Well, thank you again, everybody. And keep making fabulous books. And by the way, for those that are still listening that are on, there's 31 of you on there. If you ever have, some of those books are gorgeous. We need to build a collection at the museum so we can inspire those that are coming in, get them to start taking classes and making their own books. So always reach out to me. Let me know. We love donations. We can purchase some. So just, you guys are making some beautiful material. And we just got the collection from Catercraft Bookbinders, who just closed their doors after 70 years or something, 80 years. But one of their book collections was their unique bindings. So you're going to see that at the next Printers Fair out on display, where they use the material of the binding relates to the book and the subject. You know, for example, there's 15 of these that Mel Caven, the one who ran the shop there, Library Book Bindings. Origin of the Species, of course, has to be bound in what? Monkey hide. So it's actually in monkey hide, and other ones like that. So Fahrenheit 411 is bound in asbestos cloth, and another one on money is bound in a sheet of bills with silver coins. Really kind of a neat thing. So that'll be out on display at the next Printers Fair. All right. Well, thank you again, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you either at the museum or down at one of your events.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. And we will have the recording on the website once we're able to get it downloaded so that you can watch it again. There's so much to take in, Mark. Thank you very, very much. And thank you to every one of you